Hello and welcome everybody to the first episode of Around the Battleground. My name is LHS and I am your host. Joining me is my newest co-host. This makes co-host number 4, 5. Who knows? Who cares? I've got the one and only JMac here with me. JMac, how you doing?
Good. First time I've been on a show with you. It's actually a new experience here. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of just been around the scene together. We tried casting once, and that didn't really go so well. My only booked appearance to cast, my internet dropped in the first 5 minutes. So I have the quickest. Yeah, I think I have the quickest time to solo cast in the history of. What was that? Was that Friday Night Smite?
Yeah, that was Friday Night Smite.
It was like the last episode had to have been. Jeez, it feels like such a long time ago that Friday Night Smite was a thing. Jeez,
it really has been a while. It's been at least since Freight moved to Epic, and even before that. I mean, I'm thinking probably like 8, 9 months,
caster,
maybe.
Right? It had like I think the caster was really. I don't know if we did anything right after.
I think was on there that night. Because Finch was at it. I don't know if he was on there at that time or not, but that was like you, me, Freight. And I think Finch. I think Finch was there that night. I think it was the 4 of us. It was either Finch or D-Syncs. I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't remember. It was such a long time ago. But all right, enough about our past shows and endeavors. We're here with our new Smite show, Around the Battleground. So this is going to be basically a lot of the same old stuff. We're going to be talking about the minor league. We're going to talk about the pro league, and we're going to be talking about some collegiate Smite as well. And then at the end of the show, I will be doing an interview with FineOkay. Unfortunately, he had scrims during our live broadcast time and couldn't be here. So I had to pre-record it live earlier. So that's going to be a good one. It's about a 43-minute long interview. So buckle up, kiddos. Yeah. Turns out I'm really good at talking. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought a desk host would be able to talk?
Right, I mean, and get other people to talk. That's the key, though.
That's the trick.
As much as I can talk, if I can't get whoever's across from me to talk, that's the crucial bit. I mean, I've had interviews where you're just like pulling teeth after 3 minutes, and you're just like, how am I going to fill this time? That's the key to a good host is knowing when the interview is over, and you know when the interview's over. All right, so let's get into it. We've got what are we calling it? Are we calling it DreamHack Atlanta? Are we calling it Smite World Championship? It's not HRX anymore. What are we choosing to call it?
I think it's still considered HRX, but it's a 2-week process instead of the just normal HRX. So I think HRX is considered the placement stage, and then the DreamHack portion is what's the actual like grand final, or like the 8-team bracket. So I think this is considered HRX placements is the unofficial title.
Okay. So for those at home who don't know, JMac, why don't you walk us through a little bit how this year is different with the Road to Worlds and the Smite World Championship? As you said, it's a different, you've got the HRX portion, and then you have the actual DreamHack Atlanta portion. So why don't you explain that just a little bit?
Right. So the way that this broke down this year is instead of the normal 8 teams that we've had in our leagues in the past, it's now only 6 teams. The top 2 seeds were guaranteed to go straight to DreamHack on the 15th, 16th, whichever day. I think it's the 16th of November. Right when DreamHack starts that first day, they're guaranteed to be there no matter what. So in this case, E United and Splice on the North American side were the top 2 teams. They go straight to DreamHack. They don't have to worry about any placements. However, now on November 5th through 10th, the remaining 4 SPL NA teams, the number 1 SML team from North America, as well as the European side, and then all of the best international teams are all going into this big, it's like 15 or something team double elimination bracket where they're just going to be going at it for 6 days in a row. These teams are going to be going at it, and the top 4 teams from there will place into Worlds with the other teams who have made the top 2 NA and the top 2 EU teams from SPL. So it's only going to be 8 teams this year as opposed to the best of 1 eliminations we've had in years past. It's just going straight into an 8-team bracket afterwards.
All right, that should be a lot more fun than what we've been seeing. We do have a list of who have made it to that placement portion. I think we can bring that up. And while we do have NA, EU, and international to talk about, we're going to focus on North America here first. So the teams that made it to this placement round, we have Space Station Gaming, Trifecta, Counterlogic, Luminosity, and from the SML, we've got Armada. And Armada is going to be the topic of our first our first discussion, I guess. So we've got the SML this year was a little bit different. It's not quite franchised, but it was a lot different than years past. And so instead of being relegated into the SPL, they just have a chance to go fight, I guess, the top end SPL teams. And the team that made it out was Armada. And SML had a lot of change happen with it this season. Were you following the SML pretty closely this year?
I didn't get to follow it as close as I would have liked to. My previous job kind of really ate a lot of my time, but I've been going back. I've been watching through some videos and trying to get myself back up to that point where I could really, try and keep some kind of a discussion on them.
Okay, so a lot of teams have changed. So we have Armada. They just won their placement, their ticket to the placement rounds, and that team is Sybil, Benny Q, Sops, Cope, and Bruh. Sorry, my dog is going to town on a squirrel right now, and so let me take that away from him. But that's not the team that I really expected to make it out of the SML, especially when you've got the talent of like Wowie, Pain Devion, Mando, all kind of in the SML. Are you kind of surprised that this is the roster that made it out of the SML?
Originally I was a little surprised, but when you go back and you look at this team, I mean, it's not a bunch of, lackeys that you would think. SML has in years and even just like splits past been like, here's your number one, you're kind of close number two, and then everybody else. But this split, everybody kind of got a little bit closer. You saw it at the SPL level as well. And when you look at their names on the team, there are some former either SPL or near SPL level ones. I believe Cope was on SPL for a little while. Sops got to play with Flashpoint, if I remember correctly, last season. So there are some former SPL pros onto this team. You look over at other ones, you have Wowie, you have Oceans, who is a former professional player as well. You have, Sheikah and Mando Warrior we mentioned as well. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there, but I think the big thing for Armada was they had kind of struggled in splits past. They were just kind of trying to find who's going to fit which role best for us, who's going to, who's really going to fill this roster and come together. And I honestly, I think this is their best incarnation of a team we've seen so far.
Yeah, like you said, like they're trying to find who's best in what roles. I mean, traditionally up to this point, Sops has been, he was an ADC, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so, making some role swaps and changes there. I mean, they've definitely put together a strong roster, and, they definitely pulled up the upset. I think we can call it an upset when they took out Wowie's team, right? I know Wowie's team went through a lot of changes, and so if you really break it down and look at it and see how much change his teams had gone throughout the year, maybe you can kind of attribute them not making it further because of all of that, because of all the constant change and how tumultuous the SML proved to be. And then Sybil, Benny Q, Sops, Cope, Bruh, they all kind of stuck together a little bit. We're able to find synergy where these other teams weren't. I know. And doesn't this kind of continue the... Go ahead.
I mean, I think that's the whole thing is, we see a lot of roster changes. We even saw some at the professional level, the SPL. We saw a player disappear for a while and appear on another roster. We saw, teams trading ones through here. But Armada really kind of just kept their hold. And like we mentioned, Sops was a former ADC player. That's all I really ever knew Sops for. But you also have Benny Q on that team, who is another very well-known ADC amongst the minor league. And I think when it came down to those two, you kind of just take your swing. But I think the thing that really helped them this split with it more than anything is the double hunter meta has become a big thing, or at least, like the Freya Soul kind of meta for some of the burst mages that can act as hunters. I think that's what really did help this team, is the meta really seemed to favor these guys. It really fit into their god pool as well. And while they did have a lot of synergy and there were a lot of other roster changes for the other teams, I think that a little more often, sometimes metas favor different teams a little bit more heavily.
It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, you go to the double hunter. I mean, traditionally, what we've seen, at least, especially last year, right? That's probably the best example is you had, Elevate come in to the gauntlet, and then all of a sudden, not being a spectacular team, but then they find their meta. They find the double hunter, triple guardian. Nobody knows what to do. And then they were really able to dominate. And so another question I have for you is this Armada team. If we were to travel back in time with this team going into last year and go and put them into the gauntlet. So where Oxygen Supremacy made a big run, right. Where was it Salsa Squad who made a big run in the fall?
Salsa Squad made a decent run. Yeah, they made a good like 3 or 4 game run.
So if you were to put Armada into those situations at the gauntlet, do you think this team stacks up to big like minor league teams from the past?
Maybe not all the way towards Oxygen Supremacy's level. I think that they were really one of the cream of the crop SML teams that we have seen in quite a long time. I think that they stack up very evenly, if not maybe a little bit more in favor of Salsa Squadron. I think that they might have stacked up at least to their point, if not maybe a little bit higher. I think that Oxygen Supremacy at that time was just on fire. That was a perfect team composition for that. It was another case of Payne Divion, who was ran his team from nothing to world champion runner-up at Worlds. He knows how to grab the best of players in their roles. He knows how to bring them together as a team and really form them up. And that's why I think that they were probably the best SML team we'll see, because we had one of the best bringers of those players. We had one of the best harbingers of those players. Whereas in this time around, this is just a group of some of the best players in it coming together. I don't think that they have quite that glue that Oxygen Supremacy had, but I think they definitely stack up to where Salsa Squadron was, if not a little bit higher.
Now, and also kind of speaking of Salsa Squadron is like the biggest meme team dream thing to come out of, amateur Smite. How many pro players has come out of variations of Salsa Squadron? I'm trying to look at this roster, and I'm less familiar with all of the Salsa Squadron iterations than I'm sure you are. But Benny Q, wasn't he a part of one iteration or another of a Salsa Squadron?
I don't think that Benny Q ever was. I know that Sops, when he was on Salsa Squadron, was. Shaco, when he was on Salsa Squadron, made a run. I don't think... FineOkay, obviously, he was one at that at one time. He got to play with them, but that was... other than that, we really haven't seen a whole lot of them up there. I mean, WoWy had a good run for a while. I think it's really, Sops, WoWy, FineOkay at one iteration was there. Sheikah. I mean, those are kind of the players that we saw really rise up from that Salsa Squadron level.
We're seeing just that, like you said, Sops. I can't believe I forgot Sops on that squad, but we're seeing the tradition of that team going on and having some of its parts go on to have pretty good careers. I'm really interested to see Armada stacking up against these SPL teams. How do you think they're going to fare? Obviously, the SML meta is different from the SPL. And traditionally, what we see when going from your amateur league or whatever you want to call it into the pros is that for the first 10, 15 minutes or so, they can hold their own a lot. And then once it gets towards the later end of things, as the game goes longer, they start to fall. They start to make mistakes because they're just not as practiced there. A lot of these amateur scenes really, the emphasis is on winning the game by 15 minutes, establishing your lead, and then just pushing that. Do you think Armada can kind of find some late game prowess here as we move on to this LAN?
I think so. Like I said, this is a group of players who were at that high level at some point in their career. And it's not like they got worse as time went on. It's just other players have risen up to it. But I think that right now, I would say the bottom two really on both sides of the SPL, the NA and EU, I think that Armada could give them a run for their money. Luminosity is the squad that I've seen kind of struggling this split. They were really having a hard time finding their groove. And I think that their chemistry is kind of starting to fall apart. You're starting to see it, crackle. Whereas Armadas, they're only getting better as it goes through, defeating teams like Very Nice to Me and even Sanguine, who also had a lot of very strong players onto their team. The thing we have to remember going into this placement round is that they're going to be going up against the number 4 EU team, which I believe was Rival this time around. And that's going to prove, if I'm not mistaken onto that, I'd have to double check, but Rival, if they are the number 4, is going to be a very tough match because as everybody who's followed the pro scene for even a year and a half, maybe even these last 2 years, Rival is a LAN team. They may have some struggles online, but they are known as Lanimals, and it's going to be a really tough matchup for them. But even if they get knocked down into the the losers bracket of this whole ordeal, I think that they do still stand a good chance against some of the lower end SPL teams.
Okay, if you had to point to one person on this Armada squad to really watch as these matches and sets come up, as the person who's going to make or break the game for them, who would that catalyst be?
I'm looking at Cope. He's had one of the longer histories of some of these players. We've seen a lot of different incarnations of him in a lot of different roles, but I think him finding his groove here in the jungle is a sight to behold. I think that he's really going to be kind of the glue that holds this team together, and kind of, I don't want to say be the make or break team, but I think the make or break player, but I think that he's going to be one of the pillars for this team to really help them move past these elimination stages.
And I think that's a really easy, safe, we could probably say that about any team in this placement round, right? Is look at the jungler. If the jungler can really make plays happen, that team has a good chance of success. Right now, the meta really heavily favors that mid lane pressure. So if you're mid and your jungle can kind of make that happen, invade buff cants, and just put the enemy behind through their actions, it just lets the rest of the team kind of breathe a little bit easier and take advantage of what they need to do and focus on their lane. So I kind of agree with you. Cope, I think, is a big focus from that. Sops as well. Can he, as a fresh mid laner, kind of go up against these at least more practiced against this level of competition? And then also, I'm Sybil and Benny, okay, that's a focus too. But duo lane, who cares about duo lane right now? Look at Bruh and Solo lane. Solo lane is a very boring lane, and there's not a lot there, but if you lose your lane, that causes disaster, right? So going up against these SPL solo laners, that's going to be a huge thing for Bruh. I think Bruh can handle it. I like him in the solo lane, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if he really can hold his own.
I think for Bruh, the big thing is going to be finding his footing in the solo lane, because he's going against some of the biggest name solo laners in all of, the SPL's history, minus a few, here and there. You got guys like Scary D, FineOkay is another big one there. Kiki Sochiki and Aquarius. I mean, just even going up against Kiki, who I mentioned LG kind of being the team that I think that Armada could really have a good run up against. Kiki is one of those characters in the SPL who you just can't ban him, and you never know what he's going to do. He brought out some Morgan this season to show that, hey, I've got a big god pool, so here's a god that can utilize the entire god pool. Here, FineOkay is another one of those solo laners who I always look at because he's always the most consistent I think among any of the solo laners, he's one of the most consistent with his play. He's never outright dominating one game and just getting destroyed another. He's doing his job as a solo laner. It's keeping himself up, keeping himself either even or a little bit ahead, building up his defenses so in the late game he can come in and kind of be that shield for his team. And that's what we need to see come out of Bruh, is to be able to stack up against some of these big hitters, even like Aquarius and Scary D, who I think are probably the more aggressive of these 4 solo laners. And that's where his struggle is going to come, is how does he stack up against even onto the European side? How is he going to stack up against, guys like Deathwalker, who is one of the most well-known of all of the solo laners and probably one of the best solo laners in the world. That's really where the struggle is going to come.
All right. So I think that about covers everything we can say about this SML team. And I think it's about time to move over to the main event and talk about the SPL teams. If we look back at our graphic, that we started off with, we've got Space Station, Trifecta, Counter Logic, and Luminosity as the 4 NA teams making it to this placement round. And so, JMac, I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to start at the bottom with Luminosity and move up to Space Station, or start with Space Station and move down?
I think we should probably start from the bottom and then move our way up. That's always kind of been my favorite, is start on the low end, move upward to get to the big hitters.
All right, so we've got Luminosity. Probably not a surprise to anybody that they are in the place rounds. They didn't punch their ticket directly to the World Championships, but not a roster to really sleep on either. They have a lot of potential. They did make a late roster move. They brought in, they kicked Shadow Chair, moved Gino to mid, and the name of who they brought in is escaping me. Save me, JMac.
Inbound.
They brought in, how could I forget Bobby, the Xbox legend.
Yeah.
World champion. Bobby, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. You're my boy. So Inbound being the new support, and then you've got Gino moving into the mid lane. And so a lot of question marks there. Based on the last couple games of the season, what did you think about the roster of Luminosity here?
I think that they made a wise decision. This is nothing against Shadow Chair. He's definitely a great mid laner. He proved it early in the season that he can stand up, but I think that he just didn't quite fit the build that Luminosity wanted. And I think that moving Gino out of support, again, not a bad support player, but I think replacing him with a better support and moving him to something that he might be a little more comfortable in, it helps out. I think that this earlier in the season might have affected them more, because previously they were struggling even against CLG. In that very last matchup we saw, it was a lot closer than we've seen before in Luminosity. They have the potential to go up against the big dogs of the NA. The problem is they just always have that one little wrench in the gears that keeps them from pushing it forward. And I think that this roster with Inbound and Gino moving into the mid, I think this is kind of taking those little wrenches out. And over the next 3 weeks here, I think that's where the big focus is going to be, is getting Gino comfortable into the mid lane, getting Weekend comfortable working with Gino, because as we mentioned, mid and jungle is kind of the driving force of this meta right now. Is we really see it. You want that mid lane pressure, because that opens up a big portion of the map for you. You're winning dual lane, cool. You got access to their buffs, maybe the Gold Fury if you're lucky. But if you open up mid, you've got access to Pyromancer. You've got the Oracles with the Gold Fury, their buffs, your buffs. I mean, mid control is so big, and I think that's where I really want to see the focus more than anything else over these 3 weeks, is getting Weekend and Gino comfortable together. And then, Clout and Inbound, they're going to have to work a little bit into that dual lane, but into the solo lane, we'll leave Kiki as Kiki is, because Kiki, the man's so cheeky. He just plays whatever he wants and whatever will fit the build for his team.
As long as it's a female god.
That's not necessarily. He's changed that up a little bit.
Upgraded. He's moved up in the world.
Hey man, he brought Nuwa for a while. He had the Aphrodite, and then he brought Athena mid a long time ago. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to do with watching that whole breakup there. And that used to be, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the scene, kind of newer to it, Kiki used to be the I'm just playing female gods no matter what in the mid lane. Isis was like his big go-to, and people would just straight up ban female mages until one day he's like, okay, I'll just play Athena.
I love Kiki. So focusing on Luminosity in the roster, right? So looking at the meta is all about pressure, right? Trying to get as much as we've moved past season 4 all-out aggression. That's kind of where we kind of moved out. We're trying to get invades. You're trying to get to the enemy behind you, taking their buffs and everything like that. It's harder to do now. You can't win a game by 15 minutes, but you still, if you're applying all that pressure, you have a good chance of winning. That almost sounds to a T what Weekend wants to do in his god pool. He wants to play gods that are about pushing jungle leads, that are about putting a pressure on really aggressive junglers. But so you have that, but then you also have kind of like the direct opposite with your jungle picks too, where you're building tanky, like you're getting your Ratatasker, right? You're building gods who can come in and disrupt and then not die afterwards. So they kind of have these two very viable paths to walk down. Do you think that this is going to enable Weekend to kind of have a standout showing come LAN?
I think so. Weekend has always been one of those better on LAN than online kind of characters. I mean, we've seen a long history of Weekend, and for me, his high aggressive assassin play, the Circuits, the damage-based Ratatoskers like we used to see, the Najas, I mean, these are the kinds of characters that we know Weekend very well for. Dodgy can even be thrown into there, and to an extent, you could possibly throw Pele into this pool, but like Circuit, you know, that was his namesake god, and she's not a bad character right now. She is not a bad god to play, and I really think that this meta that's kind of built around coming back to the we want to be a little more aggressive to win through. I think that if we give Weekend and Geno gods that work really well together, that's where we can see them kind of explode and take off. I think that was the difference that we were seeing with Shadow Chair was Shadow Chair's god pool was a little bit smaller and it was a lot less aggressive early. I think Scylla was like one of the big gods he would go to. And Scylla's not that we want to get ahead god so that way when we get to late game, we destroy them. Scylla's that I just need to sit here and farm for 20, 25 minutes and hope that I don't get, sat on in this lane. So I think right now this is going to be a very favoring movement forward for Luminosity.
Okay. And then we have to talk about, so I mean, we're kind of already touching it with Geno. Geno has to be able to play pressure in the mid lane. He's got to be able to do that. He can't lose lane, because if you lose mid lane, you're giving up a lot, and that's going to put you way behind in the game and put you on your back foot for the rest. But kind of skirting around Geno, let's talk about inbound. Moving from console to PC, he's kind of making the jump that a lot of other players have. Do you think that he can find success where some of these other console supports haven't? I'm trying to think, are there any other console supports that made the jump to PC and did it well? You saw Brochacho try to make it, and he couldn't even get into the SML from like qualifiers at the start of the season.
I think Brochacho was probably the best shot that a lot of those console supports had. I think that inbound has had the best run for any of the former console now into the pro league that we have seen. I think that inbound, give him these couple of weeks to practice, get his mechanical skill back on, on the mouse and keyboard down. Maybe he's still using the controller. I don't know. That's up to him. I've seen some players who would still play on PC with their controller once they make that transition. But I think that inbound probably has the best chance of any of the console supports to make this run with Luminosity.
And Bobby here, he has a very aggressive style, if I remember correctly. That's kind of his MO. He wants to kind of run at you. If you look at the games he played against CLG, he played Sylvanas, he played Artio, and then he played Fafnir. Not exactly the twiddle your thumb kind of wait around gods there. Those are gods that want to kind of get up and kind of do some things. Do you think that's going to mesh with Clout? Clout's kind of been, for those of you who, his real name, Vedium, because Clout is just a worse name. He's kind of been this player who's kind of teetered on the edge of being, a pretty decent SPL ADC to just being on the lower end. I don't really know where to classify him at this point. And do you think with inbound being such an aggressive support, is that going to kind of open up Clout to get more damage off, to play a little bit more, aggressively in lane and not really have to worry about trying to carry the lane?
I think it will. Typically, we've seen the leave your hunter alone for 25 minutes meta, and I think that's where he kind of struggled. Was he's a little more passive of a player given that time, because his goal was, I just want to farm. But I think when you mix that aggressive support who's going to stay there a little bit longer, like inbound, as you mentioned, playing the gods like Fafnir, and I mean, I assume that Athena was banned all three of those games. Otherwise, Bobby would have been right onto that Athena, who's one of the top aggressive picks in the game at the moment, one of just the top support Guardian picks overall. I think that Inbound will be able to kind of help push Clout forward and worry less about, I just need to stay alive, and more, maybe I can kind of do things, push him out of his comfort zone a little bit. And that's kind of the key going into LAN, is everybody just like tries to think, everybody thinks that, okay, it's just LAN, you just don't have any more ping. But it's a whole new mindset. It's a whole new meta when you come to LAN. Gods that were really powerful online because of things like ping and stuff like that, they're a little less effective on the LAN because reaction time is immediate. As soon as you hear that noise, you can, for a Hunbot's ultimate, you pop, as soon as you even hear the audio attempt cue, you just pop your beads, you walk away, and it's all said and done. And I think that Inbound is going to be able to really help push them forward because it's gods that don't really care about how quick your reaction time is. In 18 seconds, I'm going to come back up, I'm going to taunt you, or I'm going to throw another hammer at you, or whatever it may be. And that's going to really kind of help push Clout forward.
Being devil's advocate, though, on the other side, like you said, Clout's been more of a passive person.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing in an aggressive support with a passive ADC can also have disaster effects where your supports run, push, and you're just like, no, I don't want to, Clout, stop. And then your support dies.
Yeah. Right. And that's that as well. Yeah, that's what these next few weeks are going to be for, is really finding that mesh in the duo lane for it. It's, we need to know, what kind of comps that we can play more aggressive on, what kind of comps that you need to just let Clout sit back with Inbound, help him out. And we might even see more rotations from supports in this upcoming, in these LAN. Like we said, the LAN metas change from the online ones. More gods, like more different gods are played at that time. And we might even see, support say, all right, you're level 5. Cool. Have fun. Do your own thing. I'm going to go gank solo lane for a little while and see what we can do here. That's what these next few weeks are for, is really kind of finding their groove, finding what that tipping point is for them between, okay, now you're just running in and dying in for no reason, or, are we just going to sit here and farm this out, or are we going to play full on, gas pedal?
And so now, kind of circling back to Gino in the mid lane, you've got aggressive support. So supports has been spending a lot of time in mid lane trying to, apply pressure. That's what you're trying to do. That could end up helping Gino a lot by having an aggressive support trying to make plays and set up. And Gino coming from that support, state of mind from, for playing for a while, he's going to be able to maybe capitalize on that a little bit more. Inbound, phenomenal shot caller. So he's going to be able to kind of direct traffic in mid really effectively, hopefully. And so do you think Gino's going to succeed more than even Clout, maybe, because of the addition of Bobby here?
I think so. I think that they needed that second very aggressive kind of shot caller position to couple with Weekend to kind of help these guys forward. I think that Bobby is probably one of the better additions that this team could have had based off the pool of players they had to grab from. I think that Bobby's definitely probably their best addition they could have had on the team.
All right. So with all that said, do you see LG making a run in the placement round?
I don't think they're going to make a very long run. And despite, me wearing the LG jersey here, it's been kind of a weird split for them. Like I did say, some of these players are better on the LAN meta. We mentioned Inbound is a former console world champion. I don't know how well they're going to stack up against even some of the EU teams. And that's one thing that in these placement rounds, we always have to take into account is, how are they going to stack up on all aspects of the play field here? How are they going to stack up against the international teams, the EU teams, and the NA teams, as well as the SML from both regions? I think that of the 4 SPL teams, their chances are better than they were maybe 2 weeks ago, but I still think that they probably have the lower chance of making it to the world stage at DreamHack.
All right, that's fair. Like LG has struggled a lot, so if you were a betting man, you probably wouldn't place too much money on them to come out on top in these games. All right, moving up the list, we have Counter Logic Gaming, also a team who made a late in the game roster change, getting rid of Homie FA and bringing Masked out of retirement to fill that slot. I talked to FineOkay today. We're going to get to his interview. We talk about, bringing in Mask a little bit. But one of the things that he did say is that they played their first set with 0 scrim time with Mask. And that first game was against E United. They lost. It didn't look very great. But then the second game they did, in the season, the regular season, they did play Luminosity. And they lost game 1. Luminosity kind of threw a curveball their way. They didn't know how to handle it. And then very quickly they were able to adjust and get, win the next 2 games in a row, and take home the W. There's a lot to unpack here with CLG. They were a team who, on paper, everyone had them as a consensus, top 3, third best team in NA, probably the first 2 being EU and SSG. But CLG just failed to live up to the hype. They had a pretty good spring split, but ever since then, it's kind of been downhill. And you can't really identify what happened, what went wrong with this team. And so do you think making a change at jungle is going to be enough to really make a difference for this team? It can right the ship as they go into the placement round.
I think so. I think that Masked, when he was on the trifecta squad, was a very powerful asset to that team. Now, if he's better on CLG or worse because of being a little bit less familiar playing with these players specifically, that's up for debate, and we'll have to see how they improve in these few weeks before the placements. But I think that when you make a change to your jungle, who's one of your core players in the game, they're one of the leading factors of how is this game going to go? Are they going to fall behind and now you have no pressure anywhere on the map? Or are they going to get so far ahead that you can walk up to their Phoenix if you want to? And I think making a change from Homie FA and bringing Mask back in, this isn't saying that Homie FA wasn't good. This isn't saying that Mask is a superior jungler. This is going to be how much better is Mask going to mesh with this team than Homie? And I think that that's going to be the key answer to this. And I do think that Mask is going to work out a little bit better for them.
Okay. I think I agree. Mask gets a lot of heat from, Worlds, right? The tank Nija not working out. And,
right.
He's kind of got a little bit of the reputation in those crucial moments for kind of falling apart. But I feel like he's grown a lot, before that and after that. And he's a player that can be really dynamic. You look at players who are feast and famine throughout the years, right? And, I feel like, traditionally Weekend's been one of those. He's either like on his game or he's kind of irrelevant. And then you look at Mask, and I don't feel like he is ever irrelevant. I feel like he's always doing something, especially this season. He's never really been the big focal point of why his team is losing. And I think that's important. I think that's what CLG is going to need. You look at their roster in the solo lane, you've got FineOkay, who feels like he's having his sophomore slump a little bit. He came out really swinging, had a phenomenal rookie year. Arguably could have been a rookie of the year candidate had Aquarius not had as good a year as he did. Very close between the two of them, though. But Aquarius has kind of had a little bit more success, kind of built upon that and has sustained it. Whereas I think FineOkay's kind of, lost his footing a bit, whether it's him, his team, the meta, whatever. FineOkay he's got to get over whatever hump is kind of in front of him. And I think he can do it. He's one of my favorite solo laners. I think he has a lot of talent and potential. How do you think FineOkay is going to stack up in the place round against some of these great solo laners?
I think it's kind of like I mentioned earlier. FineOkay he may have been in his slump now, but he never really looked bad comparatively. He was never one of those, like you mentioned, of feast or famine players. He's always had that position. He's held it very well throughout the split. And just like you, he's also one of my favorite solo laners to watch because he's got such a diverse god pool that he doesn't just limit himself to the only this or this god. He is willing to branch himself out to make adjustments to kind of alter his god pool to really better fit the composition they're going for. Whether they want a more sustaining comp by throwing an RTO in for support on Jigs and him taking a Chang'e. There's so many options available to FineOkay, and I think that I think he hit a very hard peak early in his rookie season, like you said, rookie of the season contention. But I think from that point, he never really had that same push that he did. I think that him getting kicked off his team at that point, picked up by a new squad, I think that was kind of his, maybe I'm not as bad as you guys think I am. I'm going to show you guys. And now he's kind of hit that flat line, and we really need to see him get that kick through. And maybe making this jungle change is going to help him do that. Maybe getting him a jungler who's going to work a little bit more well with him into that solo lane. Maybe, we always remember the phrase, camp the solo lane and you win. Camp solo, and it's all good for you sometimes. Maybe we'll see that from Mask here. Maybe he'll make that transition to help FineOkay kind of push himself ahead, because FineOkay never really falls behind as a player on the roster. He's always just right there, and I think that Mask is going to help him kind of push up forward.
Yeah, I think Mass is going to do a lot of that. He's going to add pressure where there wasn't as much before, maybe. I think you look at Homie and kind of say, like, something, especially after being kicked, like, okay, Homie, there was something lacking in the synergy there. And that's kind of a big thing. Your jungle and your solo having some good synergy is very helpful. You look at Aquarius and Masked back when they were looking for a solo laner, they chose Aquarius because of the synergy he has with Mask. And so hopefully FineOkay and Mask can kind of replicate that as well and have a lot of success. And then you kind of look at mid your duo lane, and Hurwin, Jigs, and Snoopy, guys who've been around forever. Jigs and Snoopy especially, and you got to give them some sort of edge because of experience, right? They've been around a while. They've been around the block. They've been to lands. They kind of know what it's about. And that's got to give them a little bit of an edge, I think. Snoopy has the potential to be a wild card in the ADC role because he tends to have an eclectic god pool at times. For the longest time, he was the guy who refused to buy boots. That was Snoopy. And he's been kind of reined in a little bit, more traditional stuff, but he's still that guy at heart, I firmly believe. And so he's definitely looking to try to pull out some crazy stuff. Jigs, I mean, when you try to like put together a list of best NA supports, you got to throw Jigs on there. He's had a huge impact in the game. And so let's focus on Hurwin. I feel like he's kind of got some question marks around him as well. When you look at the squad and they're underperforming a little bit, it's easy to look at Hurry and Homie as kind of the focal points on that. So do you think, Mass coming in to help apply more pressure out of the jungle? Do you think Hurry's going to have an uptick in production here when we get to land? Or is he going to be the one that kind of lags behind a little bit still?
I think that Hurry is definitely one of those players that we have looked at over the course of these last few splits and gone, how is his performance? And he hasn't really had that breakout performance just yet. And whether that was because Homie wasn't there to help him out, whether it was just on his own personal level here, I think that Hurry is the one we need to see have the most improvement or the most kind of standout in this upcoming placement rounds. He has a fairly wide god pool, which is going to help him out into the land because there's going to be a lot of mages up for contention. There's going to be even a lot of hunters that can be up there. I don't think that Hurry's quite up at the mid hunters that a lot of the other mid laners are, and that might come back and hurt him. But the gods that he does excel on as the mid lane mages are some of the more obnoxious Godzilla, gods like Opwash for a while. Raijin was one of those. Seeing gods like Discordia. These are going to be some of the gods that he's good on, but we need to see him do a little bit better. And I think that Mask being the more aggressive jungler is going to be able to help him kind of push that, where he's had to play these more in-your-face gods a little bit further in the backline than you probably want them to.
Okay, so I'll ask the same question. Do you see CLG being able to make a run in this environment?
I think with the addition of Mask, CLG has a good opportunity for it. I think that they might be one of the 4 teams that have their shot of going there. Like we said earlier, they were one of the teams we were looking at as the number 3 potential seed in this split after their performance in the fall and the spring. They looked like they were going to be right there. They just kind of lost their footing. And I think that coming into this land, they're going to be probably more hungry than almost any of these teams out there to really push themselves and take that spot. So I think that CLG does have a good opportunity to make it to that DreamHack stage.
I 100% agree. I can't say that they are one of my top favorites out of NA right now, just because of the down season they've had. But I can firmly give them my dark horse, placement, where I think they can upset some teams. I think they have the potential to go on a run, but they also have some flaws that could hold them back. So it'll really be interesting to see CLG perform in the placement rounds. Like, we both love FineOkay and the rest of the squad. They've got some really good players that I want to see succeed. All right, getting up near the top, next team we have is Trifecta, who, what a different team this is, from the start of the year. It's Scary D, Sam for Soccer, Paul, and Neil Ma. What a wild team this is.
It's kind of an all-around.
I don't even know who to start with.
I think the best one to start with is probably the newest member onto the team, Sam for Soccer. I think he's going to be the one that everybody's looking at come this LAN, because when he came in, he didn't have the strongest performance for the team. Losing Mask was kind of a hard thing for Trifecta, and Sam at the time didn't quite fill those shoes. I think he for sure is the player that we need to look at, because I do know that Sam, after watching him through his collegiate runs that he's done, through his SML and Challenger Circuit times, he has always kind of had that God pool that you just can't really shut out. He always has those couple little go-tos. Ratatosker is one of his big ones that he likes to kind of flock towards. And I think for a time, Susano was another one of those gods he really liked to play. I think that because he's a little bit fresher back into the SPL, a lot of weight is going to be on a lot of eyes are going to be on him this time around.
I am intimately aware of Sam for Soccer in the Collegiate League, unfortunately. So he's definitely got a lot of talent, a lot of skill. He was the guy who Eager chose to pick up to replace Pern for a bit, right? And then kind of got scapegoated a little bit after that. But he's got a lot of potential, and I want to see him succeed. I think he's got all of the tools there, but they're a little raw. And so I think this stage, this placement round, is going to be really good just for his development, if anything else. I think it's going to be really crucial experience. And if they win, they win. But I think I don't think I expect this team to do a lot, really. This is the squad that is going to have a lot of learning from this. I mean, you've got Neil Ma, who's a really fantastic mechanical player, has a really big ceiling, but hasn't fully put it all together. Paul, wonderkin in the mid, Mr. Hebo himself, but still kind of a little rough around the edges. And I feel like that's Trifecta, rough around the edges in a lot of places. Traditionally, Scary D is the guy who can't play solo lane for 15 minutes, but then after that, he's a god. He's starting to put together some more complete performances, but he's still kind of that guy who you want to put him on a god who excels at late game and team fights. He's Ama. He is the epitome of your Ama solo lane. And I think the current meta for solo plays into that play style. You're not really slap boxing too much. You're kind of just farming up, and you're not really doing much to the other guy, and you're just farming and then waiting for the team fights to happen. That's solo lane in a nutshell right now. And so I think that's going to be Scary D's kind of calling card. But as much as they do, they've got all those rough edges. So to me, I think I play CLG as a higher win percentage team than I do Trifecta at this placement round. What do you think of that?
I think so. And I don't want to, again, we always kind of come back to roster changes being the big thing here. I think that Mask was one of those players really kind of holding the aggressive style team together. Mask was known as being that aggressive player. Like, you get Zapman, who Zapman was the person that you said, I'm just going full Zapman, and you run at them and you try and kill them. If you don't, you go, well, we're going to try it again in 2 minutes when I respawn and come back in the lane. We'll just keep going. You have Neil, who you mentioned is a fantastic mechanical player, loves those aggressive gods. I mean, his Ymir is a scary thing to watch. I got to watch a few of those ones in some of the games he's played. Maybe not in the Pro League, but just in general when he's playing, you know, on his stream. He's got some.
You
very
look back at Oxygen Supremacy.
Guns.
He had a
exactly.
He had a crazy Ymir.
Crazy Ymir, Fafnir, Sylvanas, those aggressive gods. Those are where he really excels. You have Paul, Habwa, Freya, Hel. Those are gods who want to get in your face right away, get ahead, and you'll never be able to touch them again into the late, ever. If you don't shut them down within 10, 15 minutes, you're just done for. That. I mean, that's the name of Paul. Scary D, again, you mentioned he's not quite that in-your-face character here. He's more of that, my team is going to be aggressive. Otherwise, elsewhere on the map, I'm just going to kind of sit here and chill for a while. You guys do your thing. When I come over there 20, 25 minutes, then I'll help you guys do your thing. Like you said, the epitome of the AMA player. Wanting to be there, just sit, not die. And this meta really does favor it because we've seen metas past where Bluestone into, you know, Bluestone, Death's Toll, these aggressive starter style items. And now we've transitioned to the relics, and we don't really see a lot of mages blessing gods in solo lane anymore. Baron Samedi is probably the closest to that. But really, we see more Guardians blessing and occasional Warriors blessing. I think that's what really helps Scary D now, is because it's less of the burst damage solos that we used to see, because it's more of these tankies like Sobeks, Amaterasus. These, like Sobek especially, as a god we've seen a lot of as of recent. It's why he kind of got a little bit of a nerf recently. These are the kind of gods that really favor Scary D. I think that's kind of the big thing is how is Scary and how is Sam going to fit with these three aggressive players on over half of the map? 2 out of the 3 lanes is hardcore aggression. We want to be in your face and kill you. How are these 2 players going to make that transition? We know how Scary D is going to do it. How is Sam going to do it? And you mentioned rough around the edges. They want to be aggressive, but that's kind of their fault, is they want to be in your face. So you play gods that just say, stay out of our face. You play gods that deal with aggression very well. You play the anti-aggressive, the anti-initiation gods like, you know, Ganesh, and to an extent kind of Kepri is another one of those anti-initiates. Sylvanas is a good god to play up against that. The ones that, you're diving me, okay, get away from us. And I think that's going to be one of the harsh factors of Trifecta, is how are they going to deal with players against their traditional styles? And I think that CLG does have a little bit of a spot above that. It's because they can warp around the meta and the compositions very well.
I think you hit the nail on the head here, that the linchpin for how Trifecta do at the placement round is going to be how Sam can fit in with the aggression. The meta, the name of the game, all that matters in Smite right now is aggression, is pressure. If he can fill that niche in this team, like you said, you're dueling aggressive. They're going to get their pressure. Paul's an aggressive man. He's going to get his pressure in his mid lane. Is Sam going to be able to capitalize that, get the ganks he needs to do, get the buffs he needs to get? And if he can, Trifecta is going to sit pretty, because Scary D is going to come in at 15, 20 minutes and control 5v1. That's just what Scary does. And so if they can do that, Trifecta can be a scary team, but they're going to have to be able to show it. And for that, all those rough around the edges pieces, I don't know if they can. So do you think Trifecta can make a run at the placement round?
I think if we see Sam go to his more traditional gods that we're used to seeing as this, you know, how do you fit with the aggression, the early game, it's all about the early game, you let Scary do his thing late game. I think that if Sam can bring some of these really good early, kind of falls off late, but still, you know, can be that supportive line. Hunbats, Ratatoskr, and Susanna are 3 gods I can think of in that, where they want to be in your face early, like Paul and Neil and Zap all want to do. And when that late game comes, they're kind of there helping out, you know, their mid laner and their carries, sitting back there with them, pulling tanks away from them or pulling the carries in towards them. I think that's where I want to see Sam. I think if they can find that spot for Sam, Trifecta has a very good chance of making it to that DreamHack stage.
All right, I don't have anything to refute with that. Trifecta is the rough around the edges team that embodies that phrase, but they've got a lot of talent, and I don't know, CLG, something about that roster change. They should do better. I don't know. Like I said, I can't say that CLG is my favorite, like one of my favorites. the dark horse, but I want to put them ahead of Trifecta. You know, I just like, it just screams that Trifecta is not going to be able to put it all together. All right, so that leaves us with our final team at the placement round for NA, and that is Space Station Gaming. Barra and the boys, Barracuda, Jeff Hinla, Veninu, Andenster, and Aquarius. A powerhouse team. I don't know that we expect them to be here. I think we all kind of expect them to punch their ticket. But what is the most Barracuda thing to do than to have a down split somewhere in the air that causes him to have trouble at Worlds, right? That's the most Barracuda Jeff Hinla BS I've ever seen in my life. Like that is them to a T. That being said, I don't see any NA team being able to stand up to the tour de force that is this team. Do you disagree?
I agree with you on that one. It's really hard to bet against Bear and the boys because when you look at it, Cognitive Prime, that was a long time ago. Almost 4 years ago, we saw Cognitive Prime, the best team in the world at that point. Barra, Jeff, and Andy, Andenster, all on that squad. Well, look who's back over here. Barra, Jeff, Andenster. They got rid of Omega. They brought in Aquarius, who I personally think that Aquarius is a more standout player than Omega. Omega was known as I'm just going to play the Hercules, the big in-your-face, forget you, I'm taking over this lane kind of god, where Aquarius, he does that to the same extent, but has the bigger range of gods to throw it into that one. Venenu is one of those ones who kind of fits all roles. He is what I like to call the Morrigan player of the mid laners. Is he can fit whatever role you want to. If you want a burst mage, he'll play a burst mage. If you want a supportive utility mage, he's going to play that one here. I think that that's the difference between him and that incarnation of Cloud Prime with Stealth, where Stealth was the carry gods. Stealth wanted to just be, you know, the carry gods, and we saw it. It's the world's highlight clip where he gets the 3-man Sikkim in the jungle. Valentiniano Monster leads eventually into the DSI and the winning of the world championships. Venenu can do that. Or he can just sit back and play the more assassin-y style, wait in the jungle, and boom. Or he can be the sit back and kind of just do whatever he wants. If he wants to be the Baron Samdi, Baron's maybe not the big mid laner right now, the big mid lane mage that a lot of people are going to, but if he wants to be the more control heavy mid laner, he has that option. And I think that alone, with 3 former world champs and 3 standout players, Andy going back to his prime in the jungle, Jeff and Barra sticking. I don't think there's been a single duo of players together in the name of Smite's history that have been longer than Barra and Jeff. It feels like it's really impossible to break that duo lane apart.
The only time they managed to do it was for the Invitational, I think, and that was the first.
That doesn't count.
Believe, but that doesn't count anyway. Focusing on Vin, when they made the trade for Baskin for Vin, a lot of people were just like, "Oh, this is all for E United. This doesn't even make any sense. Why would you get rid of Baskin?" But I was one of the few people that were like, "Well, actually, if you look at this, Baskin ate all of the XP on the map. All of the XP passed through Baskin, and it was only by his good graces that he doled it out to Andy. That was it. Andy went hungry a lot of the time. And so getting Vin, who is a lot more, this is going to sound bad, but more team oriented. Baskin's the guy you're the carry. Everything goes through you. We're playing through you. You're the star. And Vin kind of takes a step back, plays with the team a little bit more. They can kind of go through him, or they can focus somewhere else. But he's a Swiss Army knife of a player, really. And I really like that. I really like how that potentially could impact the team and their environment and what they do. And so I think we have kind of seen that more and more. Vin being able to help this team a lot more than people were expecting. And so going into this LAN, I think we're just going to see more of that. I think it's just more experience for Vin in it in this team, different comps. He kind of gets a little more experience, and I expect LG to kind of not LG. Wow, I expect SSG to experiment a little bit, try some stuff that they wouldn't normally do. Maybe their game should be interesting to watch and see what they do it a little more on. If I expect them to play pretty generic, right? I don't know. I want to see what meta they kind of bring to the table. If they're doing quicker support to mid rotations, at a couple of different points they started with, the Hunter starting in mid, I think that was back with Baskin. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do there. I'm really interested in what their prioritization is going to be. And so I think it's easy to answer this. Does SSG make it through placement rounds? Yes. I don't think we really have to debate on that, right?
No. I don't think there's any chance that they would not make it through.
All right. So that is it for the NA SPL. We've covered all of that. Next week, we'll be getting into the EU SPL and SML winner for that. But now we're kind of going to move over into JMac's neck of the woods. NACE, the Collegiate Smite tournament series. I don't know what we're really calling it. It's the new AVGL's out, NACE's in, and we're basically at the tail end of the tournament. We've got 3 matches left to finish out the year.
It's still a little much. So what's different of NACE, for those unfamiliar with the collegiate scene, in the seasons past, the last 3 or so seasons, the way that AVGL functioned, obviously it was a little bit different. Is NACE is a school-locked collegiate league, where AVGL was a region-based collegiate team. So with AVGL, you can just kind of pick and grab, and I like this player, I like that player, and now you have this big super team formed. NACE cut all that away. It's school only, so you might see 1-2 big players here and there, and then you might see a couple of players who have been here in a while in the amateur scene. And they've also changed the formatting from what we typically saw of AVGL, which was the more league, the pool play kind of style round. This is just a straight out best of 3 double elimination bracket all the way through. Right now, we're heading into the semifinals portion of NACE's winners bracket. There are still, I think, 4 or 5 more rounds to play after that is all complete in the losers bracket end of it. It's going to go well into the very first week in November before that gets finished out here. But moving into the semifinals, I'm going to be really honest. It's a few teams that I didn't really expect to be at that point.
Oh, is that so? You don't say, JMac.
I'm saying, I do say, and there's a reason that hashtag prove JMac wrong is a thing. Right now, I'll throw my, okay, go for it.
All right, so for those of you who don't know, I saw someone in chat didn't know who I was. They asked what my credentials was, so I'm assuming that's one of your people, Mr. JMac. I been around Smite for a little bit. I did some hosting work on the desk. I've got a lot of time as an analyst for doing Smite stuff, and I picked up a team at my college, put it together, started. We didn't really have a Smite team, not really, so we made one. And I competed in AVGL. And worst mistake. Everybody memed on my team. It's the LHS team. Oh, they're worst. Yeah, Meerkat, we are RIT. So we're the worst. Everybody wants to, talk smack about LHS. And then our first semester playing, we made it to, what was it, finals? Like we made it through some technicalities.
Technicalities, but, you guys did make it to the semifinals. I will give you guys that. But y'all did place third in y'all's division, which was a fairly standout one for being, and I do have to give the credit to, for being a full university squad, which there was actually quite a few of them this past season, but there weren't a whole lot of really good ones. Yours was kind of on that upper end of it, along with teams like Carleton, who had a near full squad onto that one. We saw University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign had 2 squads that they had brought in, and they had one that was more of the A team, one that was the B team at the time for it. But
same with us, we had orange and black,
right? And that's correct. Y'all did have the orange and the black, and they had the orange and the blue or something like that for Illinois. I mean, we had a lot of we had like, I think it was 31 teams or something like that signed up for AVGL last season. We have 28 in NACE this time around. NACE has 28 teams, and all of them are full university. They doubled the count of the full university AVGL squads. And in my opinion here, I think this competition's a lot more even. And for those familiar with me and how I do my typical college things is at the start and during and all that through the season, I do a power rankings. And that's where I'm kind of saying it's teams that I didn't fully expect. And I honestly want to say it's also teams I didn't fully respect in this asset. In this asset here is there are teams that kind of just showed up to play and other teams that kind of fell to the wayside here. The first one I'm going to throw in here because they're the one that I ranked the lowest among the 4 teams here, and that's Shawnee State. That's Lord Ludd's team. I ranked them a little bit lower. I didn't think that Lord Ludd alone was going to, I was kind of thinking it's the Lord Ludd show. He's the big name on the team, but the rest of his squad has really shown up to play, and they've taken down teams like Averett University, who I ranked above them. They also defeated, where else did Shawnee play here? They defeated Miami, who I ranked a little bit above them as well. And they took down Becker, who I put at the time in the same league. But so far, Shawnee hasn't had the easiest run, but they're going to have their hardest matchup yet going against University of Illinois, who, if you've been looking at NAC all, you know that there are 2 former SPL players in here. One of them is on this squad. Meerkat and the boys of Illinois are going to be Shawnee's hardest matchup here. I don't know if we'll go into the full rounds of predictions onto here, but the other 2 teams who I didn't fully expect to be here, of the 2, RIT is probably the one that I less expected at this position. Not because RIT is a bad squad or anything like that, or not because the teams before them were bad squads. RIT just kind of surprised me because they were that, what I thought was just that middle pack team. But coming from last season into this season for collegiate, the super teams are gone. We can just form whatever we want is gone. And they kind of held their own compared to some of these other full university squads. Even KSU, Kennesaw State was one of those teams I kind of saw a little bit stronger than them, especially with their performances over the last few weeks. But RIT, they've really shown up to play this season. And then the other one who I'm not saying I didn't expect to be here because they're a bad team at all. In fact, I thought Arizona State University was one of the better teams out here. But they defeated Carleton University, who I primed to be one of those top 4 teams here. Arizona State making it kind of puts a big wrench in the gears here going into the semifinals. RIT versus ASU, obviously, you got a little bit of a bias here, Zach, but between these 2, what are you thinking?
So before I get into that, I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
So first off, before I even ask questions, can I get a blame Jithens in the chat, please? Just
yes.
Just the exclamation point blame Jithens.
Double
just,
that. Double that.
Yeah. So Jithens was in the NACE, and he had a team. When you did your preseason power rankings, what did you rank Rowan University, aka Jithens' team? I think you gave them an A ranking.
I gave them an A ranking. Among the A's, I put them on the lower end of the A's, but I did give them that A ranking.
And RIT got what was it, a B? Did you give them a B?
I think I gave them a D at first, but then I was being generous and gave them a B.
Yeah, I think so. It would have been higher if we had Shady Meeks. I understand.
Oh, if y'all had Shady Meeks, y'all would have been S+ on your own. There's no doubt on that.
So, just wanted to establish that the B ranked team has gone all the way to this point. But going back to ASU, I did watch that ASU Carleton game, and I don't know how to feel about that, because from what I understand, Carleton had internet issues in their game, and so they had some connectivity stuff, and that caused some wrenches in their game plan. At the start of the season, we played Carleton in Smite Prime. And, you know, it was the team had just come together, you know, the new solo laner, new jungle for our squad. And we were still getting used to each other. And we lost. We lost pretty heavily and handily. It was a big learning experience. We walked away from a lot. And I was pretty shocked to see that ASU beat them. But Carleton's kind of got the same MO that a lot of teams do, where they've got that amateur bug where they can play the early game really well. And then if they capitalize on the lead, they push that lead, they can win. If they don't capitalize on that lead, if they don't put the team away and they let them come back, they're less able to play that late game scenario. And that's what I feel like happened with ASU, is they just let ASU get back into the game and ultimately beat them. And so looking forward, obviously I am biased here. My team is RIT. I honestly, if we continued the level of play that we've had, I see us beating ASU and moving on to our toughest opponents yet, which is probably going to be University of Illinois. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm expecting, just because like the biggest struggles that we've had up to this point have just relatively remedied themselves. You know, our mid laner has traditionally been our focal point, make or break, win or lose, but we've kind of really diversified. I think the biggest change lately has definitely come out of our ADC, Spirit Storm. He has really stepped his game. I mean, it was rough, some nights when we were in the AVGL. I don't know if you remember, but I remember him chasing a Cullen from one end of the map to the other and him getting away. And so that was kind of the meme around our ADC for a long time. But he had 12 kills respectively in 2 different games here lately. He's really standing out. Our solo, we changed gears there, and we're just a really well-defined team, and I'm really excited. I'm super proud of my boys, and I'm really excited to have our crack at Meerkat, because I think we can beat them.
Oh yeah, you think you can take on the boys of Illinois there? You think you can take down Meerkat and Berg there?
I think so. I think we can hold our own and get to the late game, and I think the way that we play is going to be able to contain them. Well,
Meerkat, you heard it here. Meerkat, he's issuing the challenge to you. He's ready to not only see you at the finals, but beat you in the winners finals and make you play another set to try and get to the LAN. For those unfamiliar of how the double elimination will work, the team that actually loses the winners finals automatically goes, or the winners finals automatically goes to the losers finals matchup here. So that being said, if you guys, let's say that you guys, that RIT doesn't manage to beat Illinois. So Illinois goes to LAN. They're the #1 seed. They hold their position there, guaranteed. They don't have to worry to play. They don't have to play another game for almost a month until the grand finals here. If you guys don't make that there, the next group of opponents you're looking at is Georgia Tech, Texas A&M, and potentially again Carleton University. If you guys can't beat Illinois, how do you think that you guys are going to stack up against those guys?
Definitely the prospect of having to play. So if we lose to ASU, how many games do we got to go through? We got to go through 2 different rounds, or is it 3 to get back up into to make it quote LAN?
Into that make or break one. I think it's 2 games. I'll have to double check that there, but
depending on who that is, and based on our path to here, I think if Carleton makes it there, that'll be a really good team for us. I kind of want to. This is bad to say. If we don't beat ASU and we don't beat if we don't beat Meerkat's team, then I definitely want a crack at Carleton just to make up for losing to them in Smite Prime. That would be the best thing for us, is to go through Carleton to make it there. That'd be really just poetic for me. But these other teams, anything can happen when we get to these points. And so, like I said, the biggest thing for us is we're playing at a really high level. This is honestly the highest we've ever played. So the question is then, is this sustainable? Is this our new norm? Or am I going to have to do a lot more prep to really comp out in plan these games, do a lot more practice, just to try to have contingency plans in place. So like, okay, we messed up the early game, we got to have a solid late game and stuff like that. So I'm really excited for these games. I think we can make it through to Atlanta. I think that our team has it in them. It's just whether or not we execute on that. I mean, you could say that about a lot of different teams, but I really like our chances going into all of these later games.
And looking forward into the bracket here, I'm kind of taking a look at what your route will be if you even lose to, if you lose to ASU this week, you face the threat of potentially Georgia Tech and Texas A&M on your top end of it. And if you make it through those teams, the next onto the bottom end here is to look back again at KSU, who guys did beat this last time, but also Carleton, who's riding the throne through the lower side of the bracket. So those are going to be the ones you look here. And if you guys do lose to ASU, then it's potential that ASU might have another run at you guys later on. So right now, and we're talking a lot about RIT. Obviously, Zach is here, so he has a little more insight onto RIT. But one of the reasons we're talking about them so much is because for me, RIT has had the most growth of any of these teams from last season until now. Because last season they were just kind of there. They had their standout problems. As you mentioned, Spirit Storm was not as powerful as he was last season. I can attest that. I sat there and behind the desk, as much as I had to be not, I got to be nice about it. I can't be a jerk on the caster cam. But one of the things I kept saying was I want to see Spirit Storm find his footing, and it seems that so far he's found that. Another player that I was looking at you guys is Nox Trick, who is a fantastic player for your team here. I think that you guys have that potential to make it to the winners finals. I think it's going to be a tough one for you against Illinois. But I think that your team has definitely proven that they are a top 3, top 4 team here, because by getting into it, okay.
Nox one trick is Spirit Storm. He is the
name
worst.
Change.
He's worse than Clout. I hate him so much. Okay. So I just wanted to let you know.
Okay. I was wondering, I was looking through and I'm like, you mentioned Spirit Storm, but I don't see Spirit Storm. But you're saying he was a good player. I'm like,
Nox,
what's going on? Okay,
trick.
So Nox Trick, Nox one.
For the longest time, he wanted to play Nox ADC, and so I had to put the.
Don't ever let him do that. Don't ever let him do that. That's just asking for you guys not to go to LAN. You can break it out on LAN because who cares? Now you're on LAN. Now you can have some fun. You're gonna get something out of it regardless. But looking into NACE here, the format for me was kind of this is kind of that interesting point here. AVGL was the traditional league. NACE is more of this tournament style here. But after they upped it from best of 1 to best of 3, I think that's what really brought out the better competition amongst these players. Because like you said, Carleton may have taken game 1 against ASU, but then game 2 and 3 had a little bit more problems. If it was best of 1, that would just been, whoop, Carleton moves forward. Done and done. That's it. Same to you guys. You guys beat Rowan. That would have been game 1. 1 and done, in and out. I think these best of 3s have really brought out the better competition that I've seen in the collegiate league in the near 3 years that I've been a part of it. These are some of the best matchups that we've seen. There's some obvious teams that are always going to be on the lower end, the not quite level 30 teams, the kind of mixed of high level and low level, the straight up mid-level teams here. I think that this competition is a lot tighter, and I can't give a clear who the 2 teams going to LAN are, and I really can't. I think that Illinois has the best shot of all the teams. Obviously, they're still in the winner's bracket, so they, by nature, have the best opportunity because they only got to win 2 more games, where teams like A&M, Georgia Tech, and all them, they have 3, 4, maybe 5 more games that they still have to play through here. But looking forward into NACE, I think somebody asked about it, and yes, there will be a LAN final played at the DreamHack stage. It's a $50,000 prize pool up for it. I think it's, if I remember correctly, $40,000 for first and $10,000 for second. So $30,000 in scholarship is a big number to be, fighting for at that opportunity here. And I think that's the big push that we're seeing for these college teams here is they want that scholarship prize. Because trust me, I've been through college. I know how expensive that stuff is. And I went to a cheaper college in Texas where it's already a little bit lower. So I already know how expensive that is. $30,000, $40,000, even dividing that out, $8,000 each of the players, whoever it comes out to. If there's 6 players onto it, I don't remember how they're doing exactly onto it, but that's a big deal. And to have an opportunity this big really has brought out some of the best competition the collegiate scene has seen. Fun one onto that one. But looking forward, I think that these next 3 games in the winners bracket are going to be very good matchups to watch. We're definitely going to have a broadcast available for all 3 of those matches. We're going to be doing all the quarterfinal matches on a broadcast as well. And as the losers bracket starts tightening up here, we'll also have matches of those being played out through onto that. So be watching out for NACE because we're going to see some good games emerge here.
We're at that tail end, and all of the teams left right now are all going to be highly competitive. I'm really excited to really sit down and game plan against these teams. It's gonna be good. All right, so JMac, you've been here long enough. We've been recording for an hour and 20 minutes, and we still have the FineOkay interview to broadcast. So we're gonna say goodbye to JMac here. We're gonna let him, say goodbye and plug his stuff, and then we're gonna roll the interview I did earlier today with FineOkay. And then we'll come back to live, and it'll just be me, and I'll do a send-off. If you guys have any questions, I'll answer them at the end of the show, and I'll do like a 5 minutes. But JMac, what do you have to say to the people?
Hi. Thanks for coming out, and Zach, thanks for having me up here onto the show to talk about Smite in general. I've been following the scene for a very long time here in Smite, ever since beta phase is when I've been here. So getting this chance to come on here has been awesome. If you guys want to follow me, you can see down there. It's @_ JMac Tucker on Twitter. You can follow me. Somebody took just JMac Tucker and then got suspended, so I can never get that name back. Fairly well to that one. Like I mentioned with NACE broadcasts, I'll be the main, the provider for those. So you can follow me on my Twitch @JMac Tucker, no underscore in that one. That's where matches will be shown. That's where we'll either have some solo casting where it's just a little bit more fun, kind of just community hanging out, and then we'll have some of the more serious casts as the big games hit really, really shortly here. So just be on the lookout because and keep up with the Twitter. That'll tell you when I'm going live and everything like that. So it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on here, Zach.
All right. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for being my new co-host. Look forward to the next coming weeks, breaking all this down, and then we'll figure out something to do between, after DreamHack and then the question marks of the future of season 6. So looking forward to growing and spreading our knowledge of Smite together, and then rubbing it in your face when we win collegiate land. All right. So without further ado, the reason why you're all here, I know it's not for me. I know it's not for JMac. You're here for FineOkay. So I hope you guys all enjoy the interview with the Soul Lane Kid himself. It's a good one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first interview of Around the Battleground. Today we've got a pretty special guest. I think he's been on the show pretty much more than anyone. Well, our old shows, but we're not going to talk about that. We've got FineOkay from CLG. How you doing, FineOkay?
Hello. I'm good. How are you, Zach?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited about the new show. You're seeing
Looking
all
good.
of this for the first time, kind of like I am. I just got these overall overlays, and we just tried this new program out today. So very cool, very exciting. And you're our guinea pig to make sure it all works.
Sounds good to me. I'm cool with that.
So I think the last time, I'm trying to think of the last time you and I actually talked, and I think it might have been at Worlds, really talked. Because I mean, we kind of message sometimes back and forth, on Twitter. I'll ask a question or something like that. But
yeah,
really, I feel like it was Worlds when last we were able to talk and stuff. So it's been a long time.
Wow.
We're at Worlds again. So how's your year been?
Pretty good. I mean, season 5 Smite's been pretty awesome as far as all the orgs and just how much they've kind of amped up the scene. They lowered the teams or the amount of teams actually in SPL to 6. Obviously, that. So with that, they were able to put a little bit more money into each player on each team. So there's basically a guaranteed salary for every player now, so you can make a living out of Smite. You could do that before, but it was just a little bit more challenging. Now it's pretty much guaranteed. So that's been really comfortable, and it's allowed players really to focus on the competitive side of it. And I've been really enjoying that. Obviously, my team's been my team and I rather has been underperforming, but we're looking to bring it back for the Worlds. So.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that between, you know, the changing of season 5 to being franchise and everything, teams, and then, you know, your guys' team performance. I guess I want to kind of focus more on the transfer with season 5 to the teams and stuff. So you got picked up by CLG. What was the process like of kind of moving from season 4 and then like that transition period to season 5 just seemed like the wild west. Nobody knew what was kind of really going on. It was a mad dash and scramble to really get picked up by teams and put a roster together. How did you kind of navigate that landscape?
Yeah, it was definitely a free-for-all, and Smite SPL, in my opinion, has always kind of been like kind of cutthroat, and you kind of have to, it's basically networking. A lot of it is networking. Like I would say that 80% what matters is how good you are, and then 20% is probably like how many people you know, and like how many like high level players you're friends with and stuff like that. So that kind of transitioned into season 5 as well, with like the orgs and everything like that, because at first, I mean, people had ideas on what teams they wanted to put together, and some of the teams actually like stayed together, of course, like United, some of the people like Barra, Jeff Hinla and his teammates, they kind of like stayed together, but it's still truthfully was pretty much a free-for-all. Everyone was trying to just get a spot on like an org, and also everyone was contacting orgs and like telling them their worth and telling them like what team they really wanted to put together and why they think they should value their team over another team. And the players themselves, I mean, for a while we were kind of in the dark about like what we were supposed to do. So for a lot of it, we just took it in our own hands, and we just made sure that we got a good terms with all the people from different orgs, and made sure that, you know, when like the time came that you know, we could negotiate and possibly like pitch our value to them, especially like once we like decided like what teams we'd be on and like who we wanted to team with and stuff like that. So that's basically how it went down.
Were you one of the people like leading the charge, putting a team together, reaching out to your fellow players and everything, or were you someone who got reached out to by other people?
I obviously wanted to reach out to people because I really wanted to get on my team a spot, and at that point I was not in the SPL. At the end of season 4, we were relegated because I was on that Team Cryptic. We were 7th place, whatever. So technically we were relegated, so we weren't going to be in the SPL. But like I said before, the way it worked is you were just trying to get a spot on a team because everything was brand new. Everyone was like switching teams. Everyone was basically imploding for the most part, except for a few teams. And because of that, it was basically, like I said, every man for himself. So I had a chance to get on a team. So on any team, really. So I really was just looking to get on any team. I didn't really have anyone specific in mind. Obviously, I would want to team with my friends and team with the best players. So I kind of took both those into account and looked for opportunities. And I was actually approached by Jigs and Homie because I had teamed with them before, and obviously kind of left on bad terms because I got kicked from them. But they came to me and wanted me to team with them again because they thought that they had made a mistake when they kicked me, which of course I agree with. But so it was kind of a bit of both. I was looking to get a spot or a shot on a roster, and then a couple rosters came to me asking if I wanted to team with them, and I ended up going with my friends.
So, and at that time too, I mean, for people like me and people who've been around the scene, you've been around Smite for a while. You know, you're always kind of like the golden boy of what Hi-Rez wants the path to the pro to be, right? You went through the high ranked games, you went through Combine, you went through, you know, Friday Night Smite, you went through all of those phases of, you know, the peripheral of the pro league to finally get in there. But a lot of the view of the pro league from the outside looking in is that it is that kind of boys club, and you kind of touched on that with it's a lot of networking. It's a lot of who you know. I mean, you can still kind of see that even now. I mean, you know, the minor league is just a mess with teams kind of being broken up and formed and then being disformed again. Was it difficult to not be in the boys club when like all the chaos happened, or did you kind of navigate it pretty easily?
Yeah, the thing about it was I was still friends with everybody in the SPL, and just the way it worked out, there just wasn't really like open spots, and that happens a lot of times. I mean, you look at right now, there's plenty of people who are definitely good enough to be in the pro league right now. It's just there's just not enough room. So it kind of just comes down to the right timing, being lucky, who you know, and of course, like I said before, you still have to have the skill to back it up. And another thing about it is, even though a lot of it is networking, that's still a very important thing to have. Like that shows maturity and stuff, especially. Like a lot of I think a lot of problems that you'll see in like minor league are there's a lot of, this is going to sound super condescending, but there's a lot of kids, and they're not taking it as serious as like somebody who's really trying to network is trying to do. I don't know if that makes sense, but just being able to like not be toxic and understand that like you have to be on good terms with like a lot of like the people who are already established in the scene. I think both those things are like really important, but also, people play for different reasons, and some people literally only play just for fun, and they're going to be going to college. They're not really looking to make it a career out of it, so they don't really need to be doing that. So I guess it's just whatever your goal is and whatever you like to do. I feel like a lot of the minor league players probably are just playing for fun, and it's just like a little competitive thing they do on the side, so they probably don't worry too much about it, and they're probably not trying to network. And then maybe for the few people that are trying to make career out of it and really, really want Smite to like blow up and them to be a part of it, they just have to work on, being on the right side of the right people.
Yeah, I really like that. I do 100% understand like the maturity thing, and that's been like on previous shows and stuff I've kind of touched on and talked about with Smite in particular. I mean, you can look at esports as a whole and kind of look at like different levels of maturity. I mean, you're more well defined and developed leagues like League and Dota, where like that is a mature league. There's a lot of structure, rules, and like what kind of goes into it is a lot more intense. And then kind of Smite until the SPL franchise, it was really kind of none of that there. And we had talked about we really need to get teams in and structure and like team houses at some point and kind of all of that. And you're starting to see the SPL kind of progress towards that. I think we've seen NRG had a team house. Splice was at a house for a while. Was CLG ever at a house?
No, we never went to a house or anything like that. I know Splice boot camped over the summer at Kabam, who is their coach, at their I guess beach house, which is probably pretty fun. And they definitely got a lot better off of that. Playing together and being like close proximity, and just learning each other's habits and getting to know somebody outside of the game will help you a lot with understanding them in the game, because just knowing their mentality and their personality is really going to help. So I know that they got a lot better doing that. So any chance anyone gets to play together on LAN especially is going to help a whole lot and make them a lot better. And it's just better for content and just being more professional. I mean, it makes it more established, like you would see with like a sports team. They all come to the same place, they practice, and then they go their separate ways, and it's kind of the same thing. So
yeah, hopefully at some point we kind of see the minor league get a little bit more structure. There was like an attempt to kind of get it a little more this season, but I just felt like in a lot of ways it just felt kind of flat. And all the relegations, and then all of this talent that didn't make it a team on the SPL was kind of just like, what do we do now? I guess we play in the minor league. Who do we play with and all that? And so moving forward, I'd love to see the SML kind of get a little bit more love and structure. Maybe I don't know about franchising the SML, but maybe some sort of like incentivization for teams. But that's a whole other topic, getting into the minor league and trying to fix the lower
I think they
levels of
should just
Spike.
have more lands and more opportunities to play better teams, because I think one of the main issues, especially for like SML players that are really good, they just aren't good enough yet, or they haven't like quite reached their their potential, is they just never have a chance to play against better teams. I mean, if you're stuck playing against the same 3 teams that you practice against for the past 3 years, I mean, a lot of those players have been in the Challenger Cup for 2 or 3 years, and they've been stuck playing the same players for 2 to 3 years. And I know, since I had the experience of going from the Challenger Cup to the SPL, the first 3 months I started scrimming like really, really good players like Benji, Aquarius, at the time, like Divios and stuff like that. I learned so much, and I got so much better. And I mean, it definitely showed, because at the beginning when I first started playing, I was good, but I was not nearly one of the better solo laners in NA. And then by the end of last season, I was doing pretty well for myself, I would say. So, yeah, I think that to make it a lot more professional and to incentivize like orgs and stuff wanting to join the league, is they should have LANs where they play against better teams and better orgs. That way the orgs can be like, hey, look at this, we just did well at this LAN, and you know, they can make some like content out of it, and like, you know, it'd just be really like good for the scene, I feel like. And it would incentivize the lower level teams of the SPL to not be shit, because then they would be getting beat by the SML teams, and it would, you know, it would just be overall really good for competitive. And it doesn't mean that they would relegate the SPL teams. It would just mean that there's, you know, competition between the both of them. So
yeah, a team could choose to replace, if you're underperforming and you lose to the SML team, and then they're like, okay, we're going to replace you with this guy on the SML team who just, you know, whipped your ass up and down the lane all day. Yeah. I think I agree a lot. I would love to see more LANs in Smite, or just more events that Smite participated in. I mean, we're seeing DreamHack be integrated with Smite now, so I would love to see a lot more of that. But then you look at like other scenes, your Dota in your league, there's a lot of tournament event stuff that happens, like that's not the biggest stage in the world. So you know, there's definitely precedent for it to happen. Just a matter of kind of finding the right way to implement it.
Yeah.
Another thing you kind of touched on was content, and so I know season 5 they implemented a content clause. How does that kind of impacted everything? Has making content changed your play style, how you think about anything, or made any impact? Or because you were already making content, but
yeah,
being contractually obligated to make content, has that made a difference at all?
For me, it hasn't, just because I was meeting all the requirements before anyway. And like, that's something that I've always like been passionate for, is just like making, like, I used to play Call of Duty a lot, and I used to make like montages. I used to make like trick shotting videos. I used to run a trick shotting clan that got over like 15K subs on YouTube. Actually, I don't know if we got there. I think it was 10K at the time. It was pretty good, and we were like known in the community. But anyway, but yeah, so I've always had a passion for like content creation stuff, and I like streaming. I like the platform. I like the idea of everything like that. I like making a living, being your own boss, running your own hours, doing all that kind of stuff is, I think, really important, and it really helps the scene grow. However, my opinion on it is, I kind of see it like as like a free market, and the people who want to do it are going to be better at it and are going to thrive more. So the whole idea that like, I do think that there should be a minimum requirement, because, or at least some sort of way to encourage players to do it, because a lot of these players are, I'm not going to say lazy, but they just don't really enjoy it. They just don't enjoy it. Maybe they're antisocial, so they don't like streaming. They don't like talking and being in front of a camera and stuff like that, which is totally understandable. I'd say like maybe 5% or 10% of them are probably just lazy and don't feel like doing it. And then the other people just may not be good at it, you know? And that's why I think like just encouraging people to do it, but allowing the people who really want to do it to, you know, kind of be the I guess the faces of it, is like, I think pretty important, because, you know, it'll just naturally help people like thrive who are going to be better at it and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion on it. For me personally, like I said, it hasn't really changed, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm still making YouTube videos. I'm still streaming pretty consistently. I'd say like at least 100 hours a month, which is not, I mean, that's not like that crazy. It's just because I have so much time spent scrimming, doing things now. Like I have a dog now, a puppy that I have to like often take care of and watch over. And then I have the gym, then I have to eat, and then I have to do all this stuff. And I do find it sort of hard to, you know, find free time to actually stream like 6 hours a day. So lately I've only been doing like 3 or 4, which I want it to be more, but right now, as far as like how the SPL is going and everything like that, I want to focus on winning first. So that's kind of been my situation lately with it.
So I know a few content creators in the scene who I've talked to have seen really big jumps in numbers as soon as season 5 started. I mean, you look at Weekend. Weekend's always kind of done pretty good with content on YouTube and stuff, but then you look at his like season 5 stuff, and he's really grown a lot. And I think he's one of the guys who consistently puts content day in, day out, does a lot of the grind on that end, and it's really benefited him. Have you seen any kind of the jump in numbers since season 5 with your content?
Yeah, there's two things. I think one, it was a coincidence because I kind of like, I had really started being consistent with it. Like I recently started doing 2 YouTube videos a day, uploading, whether it's a gameplay or just guide or anything like that. I kind of have faltered with that a little bit. I've been doing basically 1 a day just because I've been focusing so much on getting better in scrimming and everything like that. So I think partly it was a coincidence in that I was like kind of hitting my stride with like content and everything like that. So a lot of people started like discovering me on YouTube, discovering me on Twitch and everything like that. People on like Reddit were starting to like, I've read a lot of comments. I read like every post on Reddit every day, at least the top posts, because I like to, you know, stay in the know about stuff, whether it's stupid things or if it's like important or whatever. But anyway, like I started seeing my name, like people were like, hey, like if you want to learn about soloing, just go to FineOkay's YouTube and stuff like that. So I think that helped a whole lot. And like I said, it kind of just hit my stride. And then also, of course, the fact that season 5 really helped grow all the content creators, helped flood a lot more people into the Twitch side of things and just the game in general. Like I've been seeing so many like people come into my like YouTube comments or into my stream and be like, hey, I just started the game. I came over from this game or that game, and it was like, your YouTube has helped me a whole lot, all this kind of stuff. So it definitely, season 5 has definitely helped a whole lot with that. And also something that you didn't mention, but you probably were thinking about was like all the orgs, the fans of the orgs have been like coming in and been like there's been people that are just fans of CLG. They're like, oh, I love the LCS team. Like they're my favorite team, but I heard that they picked up a Smite team. So I'll watch your YouTube, I'll watch your stream. Like here's the subscription. Like there's actually been some people have done that, which I think is really, really cool because it kind of is like a real sport where you're like, you know, you maybe get drafted to a team or maybe you're on a different team. Like LeBron goes to Lakers. Now every Laker fan who recently hated LeBron is now in love with LeBron. You know, it's just something like, it's kind of like that situation where it's like, just because you have the name in front of you, it's like all these people are like, hey, you know, we support you now. It's cool.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It's like the fan of the teams, because I mean that was kind of the whole point of bringing on these bigger orgs was they're going to bring more eyes, and so it's definitely something that you can see the tangible result from that. All right, I think we've kind of talked about all of the peripheral stuff to the game. We got to get into the nitty gritty of the season 5 competitive season. So
sounds good.
What happened? You guys on paper were. I don't know. I won't say you guys were like a favorites to be number 1, but you guys were definitely viewed as top 3 team. I mean, a lot of people, myself included, were looking at you, SSG, and United being the top 3 teams. And you guys started off strong. You had a decent year, and then kind of feels like the bottom kind of fell out as the year kind of went on. Do you have anything you want to say in regards to your feelings on the season and how it's gone?
Yeah, a few things. You're right that our spring split was like our best. Like we were, I think, 4-0 or 5-0 at the start. I think we were 4-0, doing well. Scrims were going well, everything like that. We were kind of in our honeymoon phase, and then we played United halfway through the split, and had 2 really tough losses to them. And then for the spring split, it just went downhill from there. I don't even remember. I'm not quite sure what happened in the spring split. Summer split, we underperformed, and then this fall split, we obviously underperformed as well. There's a few things I think that went wrong or that have happened. And let me preface this by saying that I still am like completely 110% fully confident in my team. I think each one of them is one of, if not the best player in their role. And I know that every team says that, or every player will say that, because if they're not saying that, then why they probably don't think they can compete. But I do think that we can compete. And I still think that we can make worlds and win worlds with everyone on our team, especially now after we made this roster change, which I'll talk about in a bit. But so I just had to preface it with that. But there were some key problems going on. There was a lot of play style differences as far as like being like super aggressive and like knowing when to be aggressive, or just playing passive and more like perfectionist and maybe more opportunistic. And Smite, I think in general, rewards just being aggressive, always being on the enemy side of the map, always looking for aggressive plays, invades, anything like that. So although there has been times where being opportunistic has been kind of the meta. So it's just like a playstyle difference. And I think that was part of the reason that we decided to part ways with Homie, and the fact that Homie's playstyle just didn't match ours completely. I think Homie's like a really, really good player, probably one of the best mechanical players to ever play the game. The problem was it just did not mesh well with our team as far as playstyle and mindset on the game. And we got Mask, who was actually a really aggressive player and mechanically could be just as good as Homie. It's just that it meshes better with our team. So I know you're probably going to ask about that, so I probably jumped ahead a little bit there, but I did have to address it. So I think that is one of the biggest problems we've had, and I think that will help a lot with it. Another thing is there's been a lot of personal things throughout the year that have kind of messed with us, and a lot of things that may not be as tangible to like talk about, like in scrims. Like we've kind of been like scrim monsters for a while. As of late, we've been doing well as well, but just like throughout the entire year, like our scrims have gone really, really well. And then when it comes time to execute it on game day, things have gone wrong. So it's just kind of one of those situations where if we can replicate completely our scrim etiquette and the way we do in scrims on most days, some days, you know, it may not be as well, but if we can replicate that completely, then I think we're one of the best teams in the world. So we just have to get that down and fix those mistakes.
So that's something that I've found really interesting. The more I do the show, the more I get into the behind the scenes kind of stuff is I see a lot of the time when teams are underperforming on the big stage and, you know, actual league games, you talk to them and then you find out they're destroying in scrims. And it's like, well, what's going on? And it's like a lot of time you hear it's like, well, yeah, we're scrim monsters, but when you're winning, you're not learning. And so
yeah,
do you feel like that's kind of the case with you guys?
Yeah, I think that is true, that when you're not learning, and you also get I think a little too comfortable, maybe complacent, and especially like if you're losing, you're going to start trying all these different things. You discover new things. You may discover a new meta for one, and whereas when you're winning, you kind of stick with what you know, and you're kind of maybe you branch out a little bit because you're comfortable. You're like, okay, well, we're winning. Maybe I can try this and that, but it's not as dire of a situation, and I don't think you can like really discover a new meta when you're already like the winning team. So I do think that does make sense. I don't think that just because you're winning all your scrims or whatever that you're going to be like, it eventually will like punish you. I don't think that's the case. It's just you have to have the right like mentality and mindset, the way you look at the game, and scrimming a lot of different teams. Like, so let's say you're winning constantly, but you're always scrimming the same team, then that's a situation where you're probably not going to learn too much. Whereas if you're winning consistently, but you're playing all these different teams, you're bouncing back and forth, you're going to maybe you even scrim like a European team and you beat them, like in that situation, you're still going to be learning a lot because you're seeing all these different perspectives, different teams, play styles, everything like that. And your play style is still coming out on top. So in that situation, I think that would probably be the best situation in which you're winning all the time, but it usually does not work out like that. And a lot of times what can happen is you can be winning, say you're scrimming one or two teams and you're consistently beating them. And then all of a sudden you got to scrim with this new team. You play them and they just destroy you with things that you had not ever been practicing with before. And that's what happened to us in the spring split or maybe spring summer split. And you're like, what the heck? Well, we didn't know about this. Like we'd never got to practice against this team. Like this seems like really broken. And so it kind of just changes people's perspectives on things. And that might be even like too dramatic. And that was, I think, a problem with us in the past is like we play against somebody and they may destroy us with something. And then we immediately think, oh, this is so broken. Like, or like, why didn't we know about this before? Why weren't we trying this? When in reality, I think there's a good balance where when you discover something new, you should be like, okay, well, maybe we should look into that, see if like why it's so valued and stuff like that. But at the same time, you just stick to your guns and be like, okay, well, we're still comfortable with what we were playing before, and this is what we know. So, yeah, I think it can be both a positive and a negative. So,
one of the interesting things with scrims that I've found over the last couple of years has been the evolution between NA and EU. I mean, for the longest time, NA was like scrim partners locked, like I mean, not locked per se, but like this team always scrimmed this team. And then EU was much more everybody kind of scrims everybody. It's a big, like, they have a schedule, I think, like it's all laminated. They like hang it on their fridge. They always know who they're going to be scrimming against. And then NA was just like, no, only you. And then as you know, the gap with EU and NA kind of grew, NA kind of adopted more, I think, the, you know, everybody kind of scrims everybody. Is that still kind of the way things are done, or do we see NA kind of getting locked in with scrim partners?
No, right now everybody pretty much scrims everybody. Like there's no partners for the most part. That's the way I think it should be. However, I think it's completely wrong to only scrim one team, especially if those two, like for example, last season before Worlds, before United won, they were scrimming who was it? LG. I guess they were LG at the time, which was Barra, Jeff, you know, that basically that team. With Baskin on it. And they were scrimming them because they were by far the two best teams, and they were the only two NA teams going to Worlds. So they were only scrimming them because it just made sense. Like that was the best practice they were going to get, and that was going to make them the most consistent and disciplined in time for Worlds. So that, I think, makes sense. However, I think when there's a lot of skill on a lot of different teams, which is definitely apparent now, especially with like new Season 5 and everything like that, it's definitely better to just scrim against everybody. And I think really it's better to have like a team that you fall back on, that is like they're your partners, like they're your buddies, like this is the team you can really rely on to scrim, try things out, make sure like you trust them, and you know that like they're going to bring their A game and like really challenge like the things you're trying to do. Because if you just scrim against a team that, you know, maybe they don't take scrims too seriously, or they're just always trying things out, like you're never going to get like a I guess like a constant variable of like, you know, they're not playing the meta things, you're not playing the meta things, like nothing's really like being learned here. So having somebody that you can always fall back on, like a partner that you're just friends with, usually it's just a team that you're really good friends with, I think is important. But you still need to reach out and play these other teams, because they all bring different play styles and different skill and different like I guess perspectives on the game, really. So
okay. And then like a quick follow-up question to that, like we don't have to delve too far into, is like where does like SML kind of fall into that? Do you guys scrim the SML teams, or like the top SML teams at all?
No, because the thing about it is we usually have an SPL team to scrim, and of course we're going to choose them almost always, not just for the sake of that they're better. I mean, although that is probably true most of the time, just because they're a team that we're going to play against. They're playing against other SPL teams. They're playing things that other SPL teams will play. So we're going to learn more from that to begin with, just because they're part of this. They're part of the 6-man group. Whereas
it's different metas between SPL and SML.
Exactly. Yeah. It may be similar, but it's not the exact same. And but to answer your question, we do scrim SML teams occasionally. Like I said, it's usually when we just don't have an SPL team to scrim. And I'm pretty sure most SPL teams will be happy to scrim an SPL team. So even though it's like a second option, and they're kind of just like, you know, we really need scrims, like, can you play? It's not so much like that, because they're still good players. And if we didn't think it was worth scrimming, like to learn or to practice against, then we wouldn't scrim them, right? So they're definitely, the top SML teams are definitely worth scrimming, and you will learn a lot from them, and they can definitely take games off of you. And very specifically, like Very Nice to Me, I think, is like a good team to scrim. And I think in the past we've scrimmed Anxiety Onset or something. I think that was their team name last season, with Mando and Mollusk and all them, and Pain. So those are two examples of teams that I think would be pretty good to scrim that were from the SML. It's just most of the time we don't scrim against them, like I said, because of, you know, it just doesn't really make sense for us. So.
All right. Now we'll kind of go back and we'll get to the roster change you mentioned. So you guys got rid of Homie, and then you got Masks now. How hard was it to convince Masks to unretire?
It was pretty hard, because I think he wanted to focus, like, it wasn't even, I don't think he was so much like burnt out with Smite as he was just wanting to focus on like real life, like school and, you know, everything that comes with real life. I wouldn't know. I don't really have one. But he just wanted to focus on that aspect of his life and his career, which is definitely understandable. But we talked to him a lot about it, and like told him like our issues and like the potential we had and everything like that. And I think he still has that competitive drive and really wants to like win worlds still. So I think that really convinced him and motivated him to come back out of retirement.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be more of like a meme answer, but like that sounds like he actually really did mean to retire and everything, and like you guys actually had to pitch him on it, and he was like reluctant. So I feel like that kind of changes the perspective a little bit, because Mask has retired and then retired what 3 times now, and everyone's just like, oh God, come on. Yeah. So now that you've got Mask, you guys what 2 sets with him at the end of the split, right? You guys played what? Luminosity and E United, right? Was the 2 teams. How did those games feel compared to the rest of the games, at least from this split?
Well, the thing about those games is we hadn't got to scrim with Mask at all, so we just went into those games brand new. Well, the 4 of us, we already knew each other, but completely different play style, completely different teammates. So it was basically playing with a brand new team. But it still felt really good, and the two games that we lost to United were really bad losses. Like I think they were our games to lose, and we definitely lost them. But they still felt like they were in our control, and we it wasn't like it was in the past where like we really didn't know what was going on, maybe, or we felt hopeless and stuff like that. It didn't feel like that at all, and so they were tough losses, but we definitely felt like we were still in the game and still in the potential to win the game. And then as far as Luminosity goes, they came at us game 1 with like a really good comp that we were not prepared for at all. And then once we understood that and got comfortable with it and started playing like I think we normally would, like a scrim and everything like that, by game 3 we had kind of dominated them. So like I said, no scrim time before, no practice with Mask really before, besides the one day that we tried him out and see if he was a good fit. So going into those games, we were a little blind, but they still felt good. And it was definitely like a baseline of like, hey, this is like how much potential we have, especially with Mask. And like, these are the things we need to work on. And once we start practicing with him and understanding his play style, what he wants to do, like we're going to become a really good team. So that's where we're at now.
Very cool. So it's kind of cool to kind of get the inside look that you guys, like, you played at United, you hadn't had any scrim times, and you guys played LG and also had minimal time with Mask, and then you guys were able to kind of get smacked around a little bit game 1 and then really quickly make adjustments to what LG was trying to do. And so I think that really speaks more than anything to what you guys are probably going to be able to do at LAN. I mean, a lot of people are going to say, well, it was just LG they beat, but LG is still, a pro team. They still have a lot of talent on that roster. I mean, they've kind of gone through their own changes, but being able to kind of adapt on the fly to what they were doing is just a really good sign. So we've been going for a while. We'll move on to some quick questions. So
okay, lightning round.
Going to LAN, lightning round. So going into LAN, what team are you looking forward to facing the most? Which team are you hoping to play again?
Probably Space Station. I would like to play Trifecta again because they beat us in our tiebreaker at the end of the season, and we kind of didn't have any practice and weren't ready for them. So I would like to play them again. Definitely would be good. I'm friends with a lot of players on that team as well. So Sam and Neil in particular. So it would be fun to play them as well, especially on LAN. But probably them in Space Station, and of course an EU team, whatever EU team, because haven't beaten an EU team yet, and I've only played them twice on LAN, so third time's a charm. So
here's hoping, right? All right. What are things your teammates do in game that you hate the most?
Oh shoot, complaining, complaining like mid game, just like about the situation or like how the game's going. Just being negative. Don't want to do that. Not that anyone on my team does it.
Oh, of course. You can remove one god from being highly valued in the solo lane and add one god into its place. Who are the 2 gods?
I'd probably do like any like low pressure guardian, so like Sobek or or maybe in like a low pressure or like a annoying mage. Chang'e isn't low pressure, but like Chang'e probably. Just like they're kind of just really, really easy, and they're like kind of hard to punish. So I'd say either of those gods, and then I would replace them with a skillful god like On Her.
Oh god.
Or Thor.
Thor and On Her. We're getting a look into the mind of FineOkay's god pool.
Don't give away my strats.
Yeah. Which season of solo lane was your favorite? I kind of look at like, you know, this is a very passive solo lane we're in. I loved when I started playing it was season 3. So it was man lane. You know, it wasn't quite as like, I think season 2 was the epitome of man lane, but season 3 was still. Yeah. And I remember watching Divios on Raven with Mask of the Vanguard just like running at people, and like the first the first 5 minutes of the game, instead of being at duo now, it was at solo, and you were watching the two solo laners just slap each other.
Yeah. I would probably say around the time, I don't remember the exact time in which season it was, but it was around the time when Bluestone and Destal were equally viable, and they were both equally OP. Like Bluestone it did what, like 30 extra damage per ability. It like ticked. And then Destal, of course, you healed for, what was it? Is it 6 at the time, 6 health and 6 mana or something? I don't remember exactly, but it was before they nerfed Destal to the point where if you had an AoE auto or a cleave, it didn't proc all 3 times or however many minions. This was when it procced as many times as however many minions you hit or however many people you hit. And then Bluestone also hit you for 30 damage per ability. And that was when like people would play Wukong into Bellona. And those are matchups where somebody can win it based on skill, and it's not passive. You're fighting. You have to constantly be looking for pressure back into the lane, constantly have to, like, because if you're losing the first 10 minutes of that game in that lane, like, you're going to get punished for it. You're going to get your buffs invaded. You're going to get whatever invaded. And that was where like skill really mattered, and understanding the matchup really mattered, and poke and knowing how to use your pots effectively and everything like that really did matter. Whereas now it's nowhere near the same as it used to be. And it's really, really hard to punish the characters that are meta right now. And the starter items aren't nearly as good and aren't nearly as helpful for being aggressive. So, yeah, I would say back then with Bluestone and Destal. Sorry, that was a bit longer than it was supposed to be, but you just got me nostalgic thinking about the times where we actually played the game in solo lane.
I hear that a lot from solo laners. Solo laners, like, they love solo lane, but then you just like, you talk to them, they're like, man, I hate solo lane.
Yeah.
So
lately they definitely need to change it. There needs to be some changes, I think. Not before Worlds, of course, because that would be too drastic, but they need to change the game.
Back when I first started playing, I mean, your solo lane was just, there was no rules to solo lane. You know, when I first started, like, you go one game, you'd see Apollo, the next game you'd see Guan Yu, and then the next game after that you'd see, you know, an Afro or some other mage, and you're just like, I have no idea what to play anymore. Like, anything and everything is viable in solo lane. So, you know, it's been a little more restricted now. So, all right,
well, so there's a couple things. Can I mention real quick? There's a couple things. Like, right now, you can play a lot of different things, which I think is a good and bad thing. The good part of it is that there's variety. You know, you can always play, just like you can play whatever. You can just play all these different characters, and it makes it cool. But I think that's also a bad thing, because the reason you're able to do that, and especially like in like a ranked level or like a casual level, is because it doesn't really matter how it goes in lane for the first 10 or 15 minutes. As long as you're not getting completely destroyed, you're going to have an impact later on in the game. So I think that's like a negative side of it. And I swear I was going to say something else, but that's probably it. So whatever.
I mean, I feel like that's just like a big mark. I think like there's been a lot of positives with season 5, but I think like the biggest thing that people are going to say transitioning, because the way that Smite's always been, like you said earlier, it's traditionally always really rewarded aggression heavily. And at the end of like season 4, we really saw, I mean, that's why United won, right? They played a comp where if they didn't win by 15 minutes, they were probably in trouble, but they executed it, right? So, I mean, like, moving away from that, I feel like we might have moved away too far from rewarding aggression. I mean, especially at the start of season 5, I can't tell you how many times, you know, I'd be in duo lane as a support and we'd get like a 5-0 start and have a level lead. And it's like, what's the point of doing anything in lane at that point? But hopefully we get some changes going on. You know, season 6 is going to be right around the corner, and always a lot of shakeup when we get the new season. So I'm really interested to see how we're going to evolve the game next. All right. So that's it for my questions, but I got one last thing for you. Do you have any shout outs you want to give? Anything you want to plug? This is your chance to stand on my soapbox and say whatever you want.
All right. Just a few things. My Twitter, which is at FineOkay_. My YouTube, where I upload gameplays, guides, talk about like pretty much everything in the solo lane. You can learn a lot from that. I do like play-by-plays, which is where I go over a game, or I'm playing in-game, and I talk about everything that I'm doing. I do in-reviews, which I review gameplays. I've done coaching videos, done everything there. So if you want to learn anything about solo, go to my YouTube, and of course my Twitch, which is twitch.tv/FineOkay, and my YouTube, I don't think I mentioned it, is just Dude I'm Fonz, or just look up FineOkay Smite on YouTube and you'll find it. And those are my 3 socials, of course. And of course, shout out to Counterlogic Gaming. They're an awesome org. And of course to my team. And hopefully we'll be ready for the LAN so that we can make worlds.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure as always. Best of luck going forward. I want to see some W's come out of CLG when we get to this land. I want to see you actually advance. All right, thanks for joining us, and
thank you.
We'll throw. Hey everybody, welcome back to the live show. I hope you enjoyed our interview with FineOkay. It was a lot of fun. It was really easy to talk to him. We could have even went longer than that, but I had to rein it back in as I realized we were, hitting 35 minutes, 40 minutes. So definitely in the future, I'll try to keep it more in check. Today's was our first trial run, and this is the time we're going to smooth out all the rough edges. It'll be a little bit more polished. Next week, we'll try to keep it down to a manageable time frame. All right. So, like I said, we're going to answer some questions. So our first question is from Senpai Black. What do y'all think about the suggestion of permabuffs from camps like in League, the Dragons, or whatever? I think it would make a difference in solo. I don't know. That would be interesting. That would be a huge change to the map and how the game is played. And honestly, I don't know that you could really implement it as much just because the VGS system, right? So adding in buffs like that would be really awkward to the map. I mean, you see how the Pyromancer's kind of done that, right? Where it's a little awkward. You can't really attack the Pyromancer. You have to call Fire Giant and then ping the Pyromancer. So adding buffs that are perma like that, I don't know, it'd be interesting. I would like to see maybe something in the Fire Giant pit like that, or maybe something replaces the Gold Fury, something like that. Maybe like that would be interesting. I would be open to the idea, especially like the beginning of the season 6. Like, okay, hey, we're gonna try something we've never done before, and that's gonna be this perma buff system. Kind of like what they did with rituals. Like, we want to make this big change and see what happens. I think it would add a lot to the objective based game part of the game. It adds a little more skill level. Making calls for the objectives would be a lot more meaningful instead of just having, okay, Fire Giant is the buff to get. You'd have skirmishes around, your Gold Furies, your Pyro, your Fire Giant, and then whatever else they add. You might have to make the map a little bit bigger, right? I'm all for making the jungle more meaningful, right? Give the junglers a real decision to make between, okay, am I going to go over there and get this gank and kill, but I'm going to lose this farm here? What do I need to do? So make that a lot more calculated. That's something I'd like to see. I want more jungle gameplay period out of Smite, I think. So I would be ultimately open to adding some more perma buffs like that. It'd have to be really well managed and executed, because like Paragon added that at the end, I think, and it added like stackable power and stuff. The more you got it, it was just broken. If you got it once, you basically couldn't lose. And so that's where it would be. That's where I would be hesitant, because it'd be really hard to balance at that point. Bigger, how much to lick your ear? $250 to buy admittance to my wedding, and then you can lick my ear. Thanks, Meeks, for that. And then double Hunter, triple Guardian. I don't know. So the everything about like Smite right now is about pressure in the mid lane and pushing ahead, and Hunter and mid can do that. And then if you even do the, you know, both Hunter starting and mid to even push that even further, it's a viable play. But I think that a lot of the game can't be won before 15-20 minutes, right? That's the like 20-25 minutes about the earliest you could possibly win a game, and especially in competitive right now. And I don't think that double Hunter triple Guardian is going to be as viable, especially with those picks and stuff right now. I just don't think it favors that. I could be completely wrong, and we could see a team bust it out and really lock people down. I think we are starting to see more of the Hunter mids, and we're going to see some of that. I think someone's going to probably bring out the triple Guardian double Hunter, but I think right now you need more pressure from your jungle to really succeed in competitive right now. And I just don't think that the triple Guardian really fits in with that. Real question though, should they bring Hand of the Gods? I don't know, maybe. I would be down for I mean, I'm also down for rituals to come back. So, you know, that's my opinion on things. I like shaking up. Hand of the Gods would be kind of cool, you know, stealing away objectives, things like that. That's always a hot, spicy play, but you're also like sacrificing something else. It's got to be able to do something. I mean, it's hard. It's just like Scout, right? How do you balance that? How do you make it worthwhile without making it broken? It's really, you know, hard balance to find. I would like to see more relics. I would like to see more like branching upgrades would be cool, I think. Maybe like, you know, for 500 you upgrade Blink to, you know, its advanced form, or for 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000 or whatever, you can get the combat Blink where even if you're in combat at work, something like that, and then increase the cooldown and kind of things like that. That'd be kind of cool. I like adding diversity and adding a bunch of counterplay into the game. That's like what's my biggest thing is like when Kuzenbo was announced, I really liked Kuzenbo because he could be the anti-burst like Guardian and the stuff, and the idea of stuff like that really appeals to me. So could Hand of the God come back? Maybe, I guess is my thing on that. If it would have to be in the right way, implemented in a good way. Any other questions before I sign off for the show for the week? I do like the idea of Kuzenbo, and I like Kuzenbo to certain comps. Rituals were the consumables you buy? Yes, Meeks, they were. They were around for a couple weeks in competitive. There's that one, I think it was E United LG game that went on forever because of the rituals on both sides. It was fantastic. I loved it. All right, if there aren't any more questions, then that'll be it for this week's show. We had a really good turnout. I think we had close to 40 people in here at our peak, and for our first show back from forever, it means the world to me, guys, that you guys came out and supported me in this new endeavor, and I can't wait for the next few weeks of shows. And I hope you guys come back next week. And I'm trying to nail down who our guest is going to be. I think I'm talking to Weekend on Monday, but I'm not sure. Next week, we're going to be talking about EU, SPL, SML stuff. And I'm trying to get an EU guest for that. So I've got to reach out to a few people. So I might reach out to Rival. You know, Alpha Jackal's a big friend of the show. He's been around on several shows, so I might reach out to him. Or I might try and get some new blood. Maybe reach back out to Obey. You know how much I love Nate and the boys. But I'll keep you guys posted. Follow me on Twitter for that information. And I think that's it. I think that's a wrap on our show. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next Friday, 6:30 p.m. right here with my co-host JMac. Until then, I don't know, smite on. Yeah, smite on, gamers.